How much did you guys like the music program this week? Good evening to you, Lisa. Good evening to everybody. I see Kevin and Gary and Kat Wilson. Who else? Lisa. We have others. 6 others joining us. I love Ukrainian music. I film it a lot. So, Oleg Skripka and Vople Videopasova, one of my favorite groups. And the hard part is when I mention that I film them here, I hear this often. But yeah, my parents like them, or my dad likes them. Not that it makes you feel older. Bear with me. I'm going to hardwire up some power, stay plugged in so that we don't have any issues with the broadcast. And didn't think about that part because I was on my main cam just a minute ago. But so wise, yes. Bear with me. It's going to be difficult, yes. Do some hardwiring of the power system here. We happen to have lights at the moment, but it's going to be a little bit of a problem if I don't plug this in because I'm at 21% on the phone. There we go. All right. Dobre. Play some tunes. Can't hear it through my noise canceling earphones though. Also, I need to get a different tripod. I have a series of little tripods. I have 10 tripods. And they're never the right size. I want it just a little bit different. The map lit up quite a bit after we got off this last broadcast a few minutes ago. It's reduced itself back to quasi-reasonable. Hold on, I'm not getting it power. There we go. Hardwired plugged in now. So, we gotta have some theme music for Dennis. Let me see. That's a good theme song for Dennis. I'll let Dennis tell you. I'm not gonna do that for him. But Dennis will be joining. I think should be able to get fairly logged in there easily. Dennis says, I have you co-hosts join there. We'll figure out the technology. I haven't been on the other receiving end of that where I get to be the guest and I have to push the buttons and come in. So I actually have no idea what it looks like. But he's at least in the chat. And he will join us here in a second for co-hosting position or shared hosting position. And we will have a chat about what's going on and what he learned today with some important hearings that were going on. Accountability is a big deal here. Дуже важливо. It's the information that we have to gain along the way. Let's see if we can get Dennis. Do you see a jump in as co-host thing? I can cancel it and resend it if necessary. I'm not sure what it looks like on your end, actually, but we can make sure it works somehow. And what is this? Why do I have a timer on my phone? I didn't tell my watch to give me anything. Yes, accountability needs to be a big deal here too. Let me see here. I'm going to send that one more time to Dennis. Let's see. Let's try that again. See if that gives you a co-hosting slot there, Dennis. And thank you for everyone who's joining right now. Bear with us. We're a few minutes till 10 o'clock, and then we will be on again tomorrow as well with Chloe to talk about journalism here. And so many technical gadgety things. Oh, it's trying to sign me on with the app. I told it I don't want the app. Come on, settings, air raid map, music. It is not showing we're live. I know we're live, but I'm looking at my browser level to see if I can jump in. I guess I'm not going to worry about it. So we've had a lot of events in the news today. Of course, we have the Munich meetings going on, but tonight we'll leave it up to our brother here to join in and see how. See, I have seen in the past old people dancing in the underground. Do they still do it? Yes, yes. I don't see them on Sundays now. A lot of times, in a couple of locations you'd see I filmed, they're in an area called Teatralna station there in Midtown and or central Kyiv, and often on Sundays, but I haven't seen them lately. I haven't been over there at that time. I'm usually back here, especially with everything iced over. I was discussing this with one of our friends, how I walk like an old penguin. I'm Mr. Brave until it's wanting to slip on the ice and bust on my ass. I don't like to do that. No, 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 no. So it actually limits how much traveling I'm trying to run around doing here. Let's just get our brother signed in here real quick. So, bear with me. I'll try to see if I can't send that co-host invite to funky technology stuff here. But we'll make it work. Oh, I feel like I almost saw him there. Also, if you have some specific commentary questions, I am reading the chat. It's hard to see it on my phone. I'm hoping we can change that by going to a couple of different gadgets. This is why, if you notice the broadcast I had about 30 minutes ago from the top of 9 o'clock, I'm using my basic camera equipment here and all the hardwiring stuff that I like. If you ever watched the live streams I did before to Twitter and to YouTube, we used a lot of the what's called open broadcasting software, OBS. And OBS is really good for being able to take my archive plus the cameras and speak to you. And I'm working on how I can get it to do phone calls. Got a little test run of it last night. And let's see, on Saturday you have us playing Ukrainian song with the guitar. I think there you are. Hey, dobry вечір.
Hey.
Jak sprawy? Dobre.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty. How about you?
Good, good. I'm so glad you're here. One, to everyone who has not met Dennis before, I haven't met you in person yet. We are so overdue for chai and kavo. We're just very busy. So I want to introduce you to my friends of why you stood out, because we have a lot of great Ukrainian voices who relay information onto Twitter, but I have a particular standard between people who are relaying information, which is great, and people who are doing reporting and journalism deeper under that. So I would see that you were reporting from Kharkiv, and now I see you're kind of a little bit everywhere. So if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and then of course we'll go through how your day was doing, because I know you were working on important things.
First of all, hello. I see. I'm super happy to see here, Chris. Thank you really for
Good luck.
really thank you. Yeah, I used to work from Kharkiv, and I worked for local media, Gwara Media. I was deputy editor in chief there, so I worked in Kharkiv since the beginning of the Russian invasion.
Yeah.
During like more than two and a half year around something like that.
Hmm.
And then now I live in Kyiv. So now here, and I'm editor in chief of Ukrainian national media, apostrophe media. But I also, as you find out, I also have my own Twitter, and I'm posting what's going on also in Kharkiv, in Kyiv, and everywhere in Ukraine. So as for me, as a Ukrainian, I think I also can show and I can explain what's going on here in my country as a Ukrainian. Sure,
Exactly.
I'm super thankful for Chris. Chris is doing a great job, really. Uh, I'm following you for I don't know how much time, and
Yeah.
really I see as you really support a lot rallies of the POW,
Yeah.
prisoners of war, and you're doing a great job. Unfortunately, we didn't meet each other, but I'm in Kiev. I think I hope we will meet one day.
Зустрічі скоро.
Yeah, really, really. I hope for that.
Yeah.
So and now, yeah, I'm reporting mostly from Kiev. Sometimes I used to travel across Donbass, Donetsk region, also Kharkiv region. For instance, I've been to Chasiv Yar in Donetsk region, Konstantinivka. I had an experience reporting from Kupiansk. I think you know the town,
Yeah.
eastern town in Kharkiv region. So that's my experience. I'm okay. The only issue I have now that I still don't have heating at home.
Oh, it's speedo, what's your speedo зараз? Yeah,
Yeah,
heating now.
yeah.
Okay, and first off, to our viewers, I had this conflict with an American who's a friend of mine. He goes, "You're always speaking Ukrainians when you're talking to Ukrainians around me. They speak English." I said, "Yeah, but I think in hybrid terms now. I speak even when people are speaking English to me, I always respond in Ukrainian. It's a beautiful language, so it's a really important thing. But do you have electricity right now?
Yeah, I have as you as you can see.
Lovable.
Yeah, yes, I
Yeah,
have.
mine just came on about an hour ago, and we never know when it's going to come in and out. So we'll talk about that as well. But you have it now. That's good. And heating, you said heating is not happening.
No, I don't have heating for more than a
Whoa.
month.
Whoa. And how do you cope with that? That's one of the things I want us to address with the people who don't know what life is like here. How are you coping with that? What's your solutions?
So how many clothes here? As you, yeah, yeah. The first option. I've covered all the windows, all the doors
Hmm.
in my apartment also. And really, the issue that can help me to cope with it is that I have electricity almost all the day.
Yeah.
So that is why I can heat my. That is the only way I can heat my home. And
Right,
also
right.
gas, we have gas, and you can use it also to heat in, for instance, kitchen. So that is
Yeah.
the only I have like there is something like that as you see.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I need one of those because I found this earlier today when we had no electricity. My fingers when they're out from under the blanket when I'm sleeping, I pull them back in like, oh man, how fucking cold is it in here? Because it's not freezing, but it's cold enough to get your attention when you wake up.
How about you? Do you have heating, electricity, etc.? Or how many hours a
Mention
day?
yeah, mention tempo. It's like just enough, and I think that I'm spending more on it than I get out of it. Because my bills this month were 4,300 hryvnia, for winter, and like during summer it's like 2,100, so it's like
Mhm,
half,
mhm.
but it'd be great if my place was like very, very warm. And the only time it gets very, very warm is when we're like almost at null, if we're like right there, it's one thing, but when it gets like it is today, even colder, you mostly barely feel it. And I know if it wasn't there, I would definitely notice the difference. But we've had elders and we've had people who've gone through this. We've had uh that you know um Baba Jinya, like there were elders who froze to death in their units.
Mhm.
2,100 buildings is what I heard the other day, that we had 2,100 buildings without. Phew.
And it's just, I think mostly on the left bank of Kiev, mostly
Yeah, that's
just
where I
because
live.
because Russia destroyed
Yeah.
two thermal power plants on left bank.
Yeah, I live
But
right near
I'm on the right.
Tets 5. Yeah.
Yeah, not only that, also Darnitska Tets, as far as I remember. Another one. And also we have severe damage here on the right bank, and we have same issues with heating also. Like they're trying to repairing it, then it works for a couple of hours, and then there is no enough pressure, as far as I understood, as I explained it. There is no enough pressure because of the electricity. So we don't have like 200, 230 probably volts. Yeah.
Wow.
But we have like 180, and it's not enough pressure for pumps to heat.
And it's such an amazing team that DTEK and the NSDS who are out working to restore the electricity, restore the the heat, while also under attack. We've actually lost people who've been killed doing that job.
They're doing a great job, 24 hours per day. So really, and as you know, that there are many repair workers who came across Ukraine from eastern, also western and southern part of from Odessa, for instance. I've met a couple of guys not so far from here who were repairing, and they were from Odessa. Like, oh wow, thank you guys that you came here to Kyiv to help Kyiv to cope with this really cold weather. But it doesn't matter, like without electricity, but also without Russians, like.
That would be a dream, right? That's the mission and the dream. I want to stick with the fact that you have a life in Kharkiv, and when I was over there a couple months ago, Kharkiv is very, very special to me. I haven't been able to spend enough time there because I'm always working here. But when I go there, I have friends, and it's such a different attitude. It's a stronger, like, I hate this word resilience. It's a trigger word for me. I can't stand the fucking word resilience, but it does apply in a way. It's like there's this thing like, oh yeah, is that what you fucking got? Okay, come on, bitch. Kharkiv is a really, really beautiful city, not simply because how it looks, but because the people. So what is the situation there when it comes to the difficulty?
Situation, like it's pretty. It will sound pretty strange for you, but the situation in Kharkiv is better than in Kyiv here.
Oh,
I had a couple discussions.
different mayor. It's a different mayor. I'm not going to criticize the mayor here. I saw a post from Ilya Ponomarenko today about Glushko. He goes, hey, it's working over there. It's working over there. Working over here. What's up? Dushoti, bro. Dushoti.
Yeah. No, it like it doesn't. It depends on where. Sure, it depends, but
sure.
I can say a couple of stories related to Kharkiv. As I was on this city. I was involved in many that was in the city, including I know mayor in person Ihor Terekhov, Kharkiv. So the issue there that just the only issue and the difference between Kyiv and Kharkiv, that Kharkiv now has some of power plants that's still operating and still providing electricity to the city. I want to name. I don't want to name the power plant still operating, but really the issue that they have Kharkiv is a couple times smaller than Kyiv. Kharkiv is just less than left bank of Kyiv. Just like to compare. And they still have a couple of thermal power plants that still help Kharkiv to operate it. But it's not enough for fully working electricity, public transport, for instance. So they have to, as you know, like they underground working like 21 time, are operating like one time per 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes.
Right.
It's not same as a Kyiv. I think you use underground here and it works pretty good. It's still like
for the most part, yeah.
So
there's been a few times when the attacks took that out, where literally they're like, "Hey, nothing's moving," and for those who don't know, in Kyiv, when the main time it doesn't work is when there's a drone attack. Metro does not travel across the river, so I've been stuck at Vidibici many times.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Vidibici, chomo. All drones, yeah, talk.
But on the other side, but on the other side, people stayed in Osokarki and waited to go to the right bank.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so basically, but typically, like if it doesn't work, at least across the river, you can go back and forth inside the city to get to destinations. And there were a few times where they hit the system hard enough. And that was part of my report I banged out tonight was how the attacks on the energy system and how many missiles they launched in order to achieve this, where they have actually stopped the metro a few times from hitting the power hard enough.
Yeah. So, by the way, let's go back to Kharkiv. So, related to Kharkiv, really, they didn't give so much efforts to really to prepare city for blackouts, and they had lots of blackouts. For instance, back in 2024, back in 2023, and I remember almost a week without any electricity in the city. So I remember we just walking without working any public transport. So Kharkiv had same blackout as here in Kiev. And I remember that, as for me, it was pretty, from the side of President Zelensky a couple of times told that, just look, Kharkiv was prepared better than Kiev, which is like pretty misleading. Yeah, Kharkiv managed to build a couple of, I don't know how, boiler houses. Really, they managed to build, but it was like, if I'm not mistaken, it's like around 50 boiler houses, which is it's pretty not enough for a city with a population with around 1 million of people. It's just for a couple of residential buildings, or maybe for just one residential neighborhood. So the issue that Kharkiv faces now, that really they have still a couple of energy facilities, and that is just in case that Kharkiv do not. So Kharkiv, I think Kharkiv has never had so many strikes at the same place at one time.
Right.
So that is a secret of Kharkiv's success.
Also,
And I hope it will be.
Um, there's also some because there's a different history of development of the city, radically different locations in these. Do you think that some of it is how, like some people say, Chris, has this got the old Soviet wiring for gas? And I don't really know. I don't, even this big city I live in, 300 square miles, Kiev is huge. So there's so many different ways just Kiev alone is designed, where the buildings in my area, my mama, who's just 2 kilometers away, um, they don't have basically the generators working, so the lift is going because for those who don't know abroad, collectives inside the buildings have developed their own power systems to support like the lifts or elevators and some electricity during this. But it took over the last 3 years to do it. But the core central development of these buildings is very different in different parts of just Kiev. So I just don't know. Like when I go to Kharkiv, I definitely see a difference on one level. And when I'm in Lviv, I see a complete difference in how things are designed in Lviv. So how do you think the difference in the way buildings are made in Kharkiv might affect? Is it basically nearly the same?
I
Similar
think
situation?
yeah.
About the same?
In most, they are the same in most. Dnipro, for instance, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Kyiv. Most of the residential buildings are just same, like 5-story, 9-story, sometimes 12-story and 16-story.
Right.
Rarely you can find like 20, like around 20. It was like almost last years of the Soviet Union, but mostly they just same in general.
Yeah. So, but as far as centralizing the how heat is distributed to the buildings, for instance, is
Yeah.
it very centralized?
Yeah, and it's a big issue. Now it became not issue; it's super problem now, just because of this centralization of the heating, of the electricity, etc. So there is also same everywhere in Ukraine, almost everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, like I said, it's a miracle that we have even electricity after I've seen them destroy. Literally, on this year it was on October 10th, which is an anniversary of the first big missile attack in 2022 on Kyiv. There was 7 locations, 5 major locations that I wrote about at the time, and they deteriorated everything down till around January 1st, 2023, and then it just kind of stopped for a while. We did not see an escalation again until a little burst in March 2023, and then escalation after May 2023 onward. and then they keep doing it each year. But this year they literally on December 10th hit Tets 5. Like it's the speed of that the air raid goes off, and within minutes there's an attack missile strike directly on there. There's no time of what I call the drone swath that comes in like we see every night. There's a slow movement of drones and then missiles. This was opposite. It was a air raid goes off immediately. 2 missiles hit right on Tets 5, which is my power plant, and the lights were out. 20 minutes later, completely out for hours. And now the other night they hit us really hard, same exact location, and it flared. The horizon over here was big fire for 20 minutes until I got downstairs, put all the thermals on to go outside. It was all out by the time I got out there, but the power never stopped. Our electricity kept working the entire time when they hit that place. And all I could do is like, fizz that, like, you can't fucking, you can't stop us. And I think that's a little bit of the lesson for Russia. Ukrainians are going to keep fucking fighting, and we'll get warmer, and we'll figure out, Bilshi sweater, palto, we'll wear our sweaters and jackets and keep going. Yeah. Oh, audio. I don't hear you. Let's see. Not sure.
I'm sorry.
There we go. I hear you now. Okay. Yeah, true.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, double. Yeah.
I think Russians really, they have like an intention that really in case of another wave of missile strikes, one more, that we are just like sitting crying and like, oh, Russians, we are so sorry, and we are ready to surrender. They are. It's not stupidity. I don't think it's stupidity, but it's just like pretty simply a simplified vision there of Ukrainians and who we are. So it really, you can hit lots of times these thermal power plants, but like nothing happens really. We don't see. Yeah, there were like a couple of rallies. I remember probably in Khmelnytsky, probably somewhere else, maybe in Lviv, or if I'm not mistaken, sure. There were like rallies with like 20 people, like. They're like, please, we need electricity. And somewhere in Khmelnytsky region, people came to the city council to ask city council to provide them electricity, which was pretty,
Right.
pretty strange. Yeah. But, and nothing happens. We don't see any rallies outside somewhere in Kyiv or in other large cities, Odessa, Lviv, doesn't matter. We don't see any rallies, but it's just, it unfortunately became a part of our life, and we just like don't care. Okay, we don't have electricity. Okay, let's take my power bank. Where is it?
Right.
Like, and nothing happens. So as I remember, there were 6 waves of missile attacks since the beginning of the year. I think, six waves. There were like 4 massive attack back in January, and we have 2 now in February.
Right.
And what happens? Really nothing.
Yeah. And I will say this, that like last night when they don't hit Kiev, we emotionally feel it elsewhere. It's I think there's a psychological effect of the way I saw the map, and it's like everywhere but here. So we stay on alert on some level, and yet where does it hit? It hits in Dnipro, it's in Lviv, and then the Battlefront Kyiv maybe, but we're not we're very much on alert here anyway, and we feel it differently.
Yeah, we feel it differently, but by the way, as we have unified system, in case if the thermal, as I remember and as I know that really you are right that you told about Ivano-Frankivsk region, really Russia hit a lot during the last 2 attacks. They hit with like dozens of missiles and I think around 100 of drones, total of 100 of drones.
Right.
They hit a thermal power plant outside Ivano-Frankivsk. And we will also feel it, but in the case that we just have less time, we'll have probably less time with electricity, just because of this unified system. But what else? I'd like. Oh,
we see our friend. Real quick. I just see we have friends like Patty and others, Arcadian, saying hello. So I want to definitely say hello to everybody for joining us. We've got a lot of conversation coming. And again, thank you. You're pointing out that if you haven't been following Dennis on this platform and on X, of course, Make sure you do. Don't miss it. We're going to do this a lot. We're going to build our own organic news way of doing things. So that's how we do it. Anyway, please continue, my friend.
Yeah, what I see and what Russians are trying to do, they're trying to do like let's name it like electrician islands. What I mean, so they're trying just to destroy plants around Kharkiv, around also Zaporizhia and Dnipro. The hardest is to provide this electricity from the right to the left bank, as we have on the right bank. We have three nuclear power plants in near Rivne, Khmelnytsky, and somewhere I think in Mykolaiv region. So we have three, and also one in the occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is occupied now, and it cannot provide electricity to Ukraine.
Right.
So the issue, so they are doing all they can just to make like this island, just in case that Kharkiv cannot be connected or Sumy cannot be connected to another part of Ukraine, they will totally be in blackout in case if their thermal power plant are destroyed. So there is, I think there is there, as you found out, that they also hit Dnipro and some areas outside Dnipro. So I think that is their new. It's not ideal, I know, but I think that is they are trying to do in this case. So on the one other hand, really they are terrorizing like areas in the western Ukraine. On the other hand, I think that what they are doing is just like to make Dnipro as an island, to put it in a full blackout, which they were really trying to do. So they not destroyed, but partly destroyed local thermal power plant, which is Dniprovsk thermal power plant, which is in Dnipro. And one more, as I remember, they damaged some grids that provided electricity to Dnipro. There is a way they put Dnipro like for a day or a couple of days to most of the city.
Yeah, Sean Penner has been posting that they haven't had electricity for days now. Our buddy Sean,
yeah. I've seen your previous video with Sean, as I remember.
Well, he was going to be on, like he had some people invited him to other commentary last couple of days, and he's like, it's not happening. I'm lucky if I get power bank returned. So we'll find him on Friday one way or the other. But yeah, it's definitely something they're trying to do down there.
So, but I think that we will have a couple of new wave of massive attacks again against our electricity facilities.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to see where
till the end of winter.
I was on earlier, and it kind of went back to just the east, and then I went off of space. I did like 30-minute space before we went on, and it was all red again, and then it was all back to not. It's like, okay, what's the weather map look like? Terrorism. So I have a question. So what did you want to talk about what you covered today?
As I'm editor-in-chief, so I have to coordinate what's going on here in Kyiv, and we remember about the court. There were court hearing on German Halushchenko, who is he was energy minister, and also probably minister of justice, as I remember, which is pretty strange. Right. Like a man was firstly put to energy ministers and minister of justice, which is. But by the way, yeah. And I was coordinated the work of my colleagues, of the journalists, of photojournalists, which was, as you know, like it was in high anti-corruption court in Kyiv.
Right.
In Kyiv, so really it was pretty. As for me, I was a bit shocked the way how this man he thought that nothing happens with him, and really he was looking so. I don't know how to explain this. Like, he was so confident in his. He was so like sure that nothing will happen with him. It's just like told, I just plan to travel to Warsaw and then nothing happens. And I had a couple of discussions with my colleagues. I wasn't there in the court, and really, which the issue which was shocked that like that he told that I can pay around like 30 or 40 million hryvnia, so I think I can found this money. And like as for minister whose salary is like no more than 100,000 hryvnias, he just easily says that like I can pay for our readers. I can say that it's around like up to $1 million. So he said that I can pay him for around $1 million. So that is the issue. That I was really shocked with it.
I would say so. I come from no money. My parents were not wealthy. I've never been wealthy. Never been close to being wealthy. I fit in very naturally here, And one of the things I learned about incomes here early on, I would like when I was in the cafe, I would ask the girl like, "So you work 13 hours today, tomorrow, and then 2 days later. Then how much do you wait? How much do you bring home? Oh, like per week? Yeah. Well, how about if I say per month? I said that's fine. And she told me the number. I went, uh, hold on. I would pulled money out of my pocket because we have dollars, a little bit of money. Like here, she goes, no, no. I said no, literally. You give me coffee and hot dog every day, like it's the least I could do because I was stunned at the number, the living level. So when you talk about the amount of money, he just went, yeah, well, how much you need? Yeah, no problem. That would get everyone's attention here.
So yeah, but like they
Wow.
asked in bail like around I think $10 million.
Oof.
So yeah, it was a form of detention.
Mhm.
So he had like or detention or alternative of paying $10 million. He said that German Galushenko said that he sure he didn't have such amount of money, but he say like at least I have like around $1 million. Like it was pretty strange. I had a couple of discussions with this guy before when I used to work in Kharkiv, and he came
Right.
when we had a blackout for a week. And I remember that this guy, he was like just a basic, official.
Yeah.
And I remember that he told like all is good. If you will probably have later electricity. We did all our best to repair electricity and to protect electricity in Kharkiv.
Hmm.
Let me say like nothing. They did. They really did nothing.
Zilzimila.
Yeah, they just like I came to this thermal plant after these missile strikes, and I see that really nothing happens, and it didn't have any protection really at all.
Wow.
Any protection.
Wow.
But by the way, I remember this guy like I had a couple of meetings maybe around two plus years ago.
Hmm.
And I was pretty shocked that how was it. On the one hand, I'm really happy that still Ukrainian anti-corruption system works, and it really works. And we have like some proofs to show for European Union, for other countries to see that really, look, guys, it works now. On the one hand, on the other hand, like it took for them around like 3 or 4 months, as I remember about this Midas operation by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. So it took
Right.
really for National Anti-Corruption Bureau 4 months, really. So
Well, let me do this. I don't have my software version plugged in, but here's the upward mobility of Ukrainian fight against corruption. You can
mhm,
see that the
mhm.
numbers keep going up, but let's look at Russia. They're always at the bottom, and it keeps going
Mhm,
down.
mhm.
But then, comparatives to what I call the shit talkers, when Viktor Orban talks about garbage, look at the numbers. It's going down. And even more so in America, where a lot of shit talking happens. It's going down. And so that's what's important is that and you saw my post earlier today when a guy who's a Ukrainian in Germany says, "Don't talk about corruption." Oh no, no, you want me to talk about corruption? I'm your friend. Because I did this when I first got here. I hear this word, and I thought it's just a word if you don't investigate what is underneath it. And so I did. And what I didn't know at the time was I didn't know a lot about the Transparency Corruption Index model. And a friend of mine who's an American investor came here, and he very much invested in the Reconstruction discussions. And he said, you have to look at it the way I do as someone who puts big money on the table in many, many countries. If I had to put $10,000 extra to get something productive, then I'll do it. Okay, that seemed like corruption at the time, but he was trying to talk about cost of business. In other words, some countries are more difficult than others. And I already understand that. He goes, but you got to look at the upward trend. So I went to look at from the year 2000 onward until at the time 2024, so 2 years ago. And all I saw was it was increasingly getting better, but there was only one period of time that went down, and that was during Yanukovych. And then after 24, it went back up. It was increasingly showing a span of increased improvement. Last year went down by a notch, but this year proved again that the trend continues, that Ukrainians are fighting this at every level. And this is why these hearings are so important. Plus, one more thing to the audience, and I'll hand the mic to you on this. I always can tell where the focus is for Westerners, for people in between like me, and for Ukrainians, because the Ukrainian newsphere is like, oh, you see the court hearing today, and that's where the journalists I know who are Ukrainian, they're all at the court hearing. It's the camera's going, and it's a big deal.
Like really court hearings in Ukraine became a great show.
Yeah.
Really. But the issue in this case, I want to
We have no such shows in America, by the way. It's just called Congress hearings.
But the issue here that there are lots of corruption court hearings, but the issue and the problem is for me that we don't have many convictions that were for the corrupt officials. That we must have convictions. In this case, the corruption system will show that it is capable to do it, but really we almost do not have, and that is an issue. But by the way, with respect, I see that Arkadian Tsatsiki had a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
He just asked.
Absolutely.
He first question he had about Ukrainian kids. And he told about alarms in Ukraine, so the online courses were stopping. Yeah, that is it. First of all, I want to say that that's a big issue for Ukraine, that we don't have really children have to go to the basement. For instance, in Kharkiv, children do not study at all outside. They mostly study in the basement. We have some underground schools. So in this case, in case of this offline study, it's pretty good education. It's still, I would like it to be better, but it's pretty good. It's enough for Ukraine, even during the invasion. Mm-hmm. But the issue, the education level does not affect a lot for school children, but it will affect for students at the university, colleges, and somewhere else. So that is a big deal, just because lots of people went to Europe, lots of quality stuff, experienced stuff, who came to not only to Europe, also to the United States, who came to do the same in the universities in the United States, and also European Union countries came. So I think Ukrainian high education suffered the most in comparison with just schools. So the issue we have with higher education, really. And I see it in Kharkiv. So really, Kharkiv lots of good people, lots of well-educated people in universities, just because of the really, some people earn in Kharkiv universities like around $300, which is pretty not enough. If you have a family, that is an issue.
It's better off to go be an energy minister.
My God, Chris, And also, you think that the Greece Ukraine gas deal started in March? Yeah, I know about this because I remember that Ukraine's president signed when he went Athens, and I remember he signed a contract with Greece Prime Minister. Yeah, I think it will help minimize the electricity and heating issues, partly. I think in this case, it will help to diversify gas supplies to Ukraine. So Ukraine is now we are seeking somewhere, I guess, to find. Also, as I remember with Azerbaijan, also they trying to find something through Turkey, also Greece. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is the ways we are trying just to diversify. As you know, that Russia also hit our places in Poltava, in Poltava region, in Kharkiv region, also in Lviv region. So it was part of one of the attack, and they really pretty damaged our production of gas. So that is, it also could help. But yeah, sure, it will minimizing just because some of the boiler houses working on gas. So yeah, it will help.
And again, if you guys have questions in the space, we are reading and watching those down there. So please, by all means, ask. That's what this is for. I really want to increase the ability for you guys to get authentic quality information from real journalists instead of, no offense to the influencer crowd, lots of offense to the influencer. I want to make sure that you're getting quality information, much like I say about nutrition, So real quick on staying to the education side, it's some of it's institutional in the sense that it's been that way for a long time. I know that universities were sort of like a big way to show how great Soviet Union was, and then as things evolved into modern times, I have friends who are my age, so they came of age in the 80s and 90s, and they went to university. But now I talk to a lot of young people who are in their 20s and 30s, and same thing. They have ambitions for personal success that really involves having education, and I come from a country where that's all on YouTube. Where like I have a YouTube degree, I have a Reddit degree, and it's not the same value of real skill building. So as a Ukrainian, share with our friends, if you don't mind, what you think it's like in across the country from just people and how that develops in the self-reliance, but also like the building oneself up as a young person into the future in Ukraine with education.
Oh,
In 25 minutes or an hour or less.
Yeah, we had before COVID, before all these circumstances that we have now. I mean invasion. We had really lots of issues just because people really they are mostly are not motivated who work at the university. Not all the university. I just say average. Yeah, we have like couple of we name it like big four, big three university in Kyiv, like Polytechnic University, Kyiv National University for sure, maybe Kyiv National Economical University. So we have like in the whole country, it's no more than 10 universities, which provide still pretty good quality of the higher education, which is sometimes it is outdated. I remember like I remember I have like just small case during during me getting my journalistic bachelor degree in Kharkiv National University. It was back like seven years probably ago. Oh yeah. As it was 7 years ago. So, and I used to work as a journalist for local media outlet. So, and I came to the visit of Andrzej Duda, previous Polish president. He came together with Poroshenko, also previous Ukrainian president, and I took pictures and I walked on their visit to Kharkiv.
Right.
And it was part of my task for the university. And when I took these pictures and I explained what was drawn in these pictures, and I also sent links to my photos published on this outlet, and I had like my teacher told me like it's not your photos. I don't believe that you took these photos. And it was pretty strange for me just because like no, I took these photos, I had special accreditation, like etc and explained it, and they just didn't believe that young people could do this could do this like in when I was like 20, maybe 21 years old. So it was really just because there were mostly 60, 70 and older years old people, and they were like just like sitting and doing nothing, and they just didn't believe that you were doing, and they like, oh, you're so young for this for working as a journalist, you must be like at least 30 years old, 40 years old, it doesn't matter. So that was an issue. So we had really problems with higher education, but we have so these 10 universities somewhere, for instance in Lviv, in Kyiv, the education is pretty good, and there are lots of exchange programs, and you can use Erasmus and travel somewhere in Europe. Also, we have some exchange programs with the United Kingdom, with Great Britain. So it's not a problem now if you are young, if you are super motivated to get both diplomas in Ukraine and also diploma, master's degree somewhere in European Union or outside European Union.
Right.
But however, really, we have a shortage of people who are motivated and who are trying.
I want to get one in literature.
Oh,
I would like to get one in like Ukrainian literature before I die. so I could properly cite Halushchenko and Ivan Franko in the original language. Yeah, this is the place to do it. Since you're from Kharkiv, I know that one of the things that always stuck out to me. I have a friend of mine that's over there, Ihor. I met him in Lviv like a few days before I went to Bucha, and he had this sign that says like Obey Yaksho Putin Kuilo, I believe that's what it says. But basically, hug me if you think Putin's a dickhead. I was like, oh yeah, Putin Kuilo. He goes, oh, you could read this, yeah. What's your name? What's about the? Oh, you're. So we became really great friends. And he was 17. And he's walking around doing history lessons in Lviv to young kids, like there were 10, 11 who were displaced. And I would run into him on the street. I'd be on the phone back home and I would be talking. I said, "Hold on, hey, it's my friend. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm teaching right now. You're teaching? Wow, what are you teaching? You're like 17, 18 years old. You're teaching? Oh yeah, history, Deutsche level." And he was so proud of the universities of Kharkiv, and so that's why I wanted to pivot back to the fact that you're from Kharkiv, that the university there is very emotionally important as well as part of the identity. And in America, we have towns and cities who are much like that. We call them college towns, but you know, since you're in Kiev, is there a truth to that? Like that the university vibe of Kharkiv is like a little bit more something than it is here in Kiev, or is that just an illusion for me? You could
Kharkiv
brag on
had
Kharkiv safely here, by the way.
No, Kharkiv University really. Kharkiv is second largest city and also second city with, in terms of universities, in terms of
Yeah,
people who came outside. As I remember, like around 200,000 of students came to Kharkiv. It was before the invasion. Sure, came to Kharkiv
yeah,
before the invasion, and around, as I remember, 35,000 of students from abroad came to Kharkiv,
yeah,
mostly to study at the medical university, but also in other medical university because it's so easy to explain. It was cheaper than in European Union, but it's still pretty good quality.
yeah,
So and lots of people also from the European Union countries came to Kharkiv to study there. So, but yeah, Kharkiv had this its own charm. Unfortunately, it is losing now. It just because if you've been to Kharkiv, you probably couldn't found there any young people, or you found
yeah,
not so many of them.
yeah. They're either here, Lviv, or in Europe.
Yeah. So that is an issue that mostly educational remote, educational universities are working remotely. There are a couple of groups, like a couple of courses that can be provided offline, but also if you don't have basement, you cannot operate. So there are so many restrictions by the state emergency service. As I remember, I had a couple of people who working, for instance, in the National University, and also in National Law University,
Hmm.
Yaroslav Mudry National University, also in Kharkiv. So really, that's an issue that firstly you must to have basement. You must have another one. You must to arrange to ask people to go to Kharkiv, which is pretty. It's a bit dangerous, to stay in Kharkiv now. mm, So also you must to have staff pre-educated. So we have lots of like these and these that cannot help Kharkiv now to be still like an educational capital of Ukraine. So I think Lviv now is second largest cities is I think yeah is second largest city in terms of universities in Ukraine. I think UKU, Ukrainian Catholic University, is now pretty good in Lviv.
Yeah,
Also Lviv National University, Lviv Polytechnic University. So
I have a lot of friends at Lviv Polytechnic studying there
yeah.
for the year. Yeah,
Yeah, so now Lviv, unfortunately, Lviv is unfortunately for Kharkiv, but I'm happy for Lviv. By the way, Lviv now I think is second, and really I had a couple of friends who graduated from the Ukrainian Catholic University, and they say like really it was the quality was pretty good, and they also have exchange programs with Polish universities and somewhere in Europe, probably in Germany. So yeah,
yeah.
and it's
Here's one.
okay for
Here's
them.
one that stood out. Here's one that stood out. Speaking of one city that there was a black guy that came here to be a part of the Legion thing, and he was mentioned on Russian television, and the Russians said, "Oh, he's probably one of those guys from Ternopil." And I immediately knew why, because for those who don't know, where a lot of African students will come to get, university in Ukraine, they'll be here in Kyiv, obviously, but in Ternopil, so typical Russians, racist as fuck. First off, racist as fuck,
Yeah.
but also it's interesting that they have it mapped out like that. Oh, it must be from Ternopil, like. No, not from Chernobyl, but I run into people here from African countries in India, especially like I'm an Indian trained musician, so I always, hey, what's up? How are you? What are you doing here? Oh, I'm a student. Like, how long have you been here? 5, 6 years? Really? So you've been here for like a couple of years before full scale? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's university draws, the medical university especially.
Yeah. They mostly choose medical universities across Ukraine: Dnipro, Kharkiv, Odessa, Lviv, Kyiv.
Yeah.
So yeah, just because it's cheap and it's pretty good quality.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
one of the comments in space. I think Arcadian said this. The scrolling was about people who choose engineering and IT, and I want to focus a little bit on the IT side, especially because of our new Minister of Defense, who I got to see a little bit more often this last year, and he gets to hear me speak Ukrainian, even though I know he speaks English. But Fedorov, sort of to me embodies what I saw in the very first few months when I got here, because I'm an IT guy. I've run a web company for 27 years, and essentially from my financial background, there is no money. IT was always a solution. For low cost overhead, I can produce, results and economic possibility. So I knew early on that IT development in the younger generation would create a low cost return of growth, and now we see it at the defense level. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Uh, what do you say about IT?
Okay, sure. So what do you think? What do you think? Yeah. Let me frame it as a question.
Okay.
So when you consider like the fact that we have drone development, weapons development, AI development, like the country when it is the first one to be run entirely on, with an AI system built in, does that surprise you? And more important, what do you think you can say about the newer generation of young people and the possibilities that are created because of IT access?
It doesn't surprise me at all, because of Ukrainians really. So we had, as I remember, involved in IT around 250,000 of people. So that's pretty a lot, and they are generating so many, a lot money in GDP in Ukraine, and they still generated this money, taking it inside Ukraine, working for international project, mostly in the United States still. So really, lots of the issue we have, and what I'm still like not shocked, but Ukraine for all the years since independence, 1991, we are losing people. We're losing well-educated people who got pretty good education. I think we have good IT here in universities. For instance, Kyiv Polytechnic University provide pretty good knowledge of IT. The issue that we are losing for this 35 years of the independence, we are losing like one wave, another one wave. One wave was in the 90s, the next one in millennium at the beginning of this century. Another one wave was during the first Russian incursion, Russian invasion of Donbass. Still many people left Ukraine, like around 1 million people, and now we have one more. And the problem is that these young people are educating here, are studying here, and then choosing to leave Ukraine.
To leave, right?
Yeah. That is my issues. We are not stupid. We are not stupid. We have lots of people who are, who have aim to get a lot of money, to get a salary same as in the United States, but even in Ukraine, it's pretty different.
Yeah,
$5,000 in the United States and $5,000 here. It's super huge difference. Yeah. So
my apartment studio here is 16,000 hryvnia, so that's about $370 US. You can't find anything in US
Yeah.
for $370. It's more than that. It's not going to be there. And if you were like one friend says, well, I want to move to New York or Chicago, like, oh no, no. Oh wow. How do I explain the price differential? It's going to be this much money. He went, no. So he goes abroad and he found out, like what I said, was worse than that. It actually had gone up even higher. Like a tiny little apartment was $1,200 US, which is, I don't remember the calculation, but that's, a lot of Ukrainian money.
So yeah, that make me frustrated. That so many people left, not just because of the war, like during last 4 years, but even long time ago, like decade ago. So I have really lots of friends of mine who used to study with me, but really lots of people just went abroad, find themselves, and just live somewhere abroad, but not in Ukraine. So the issue that they do not generate any taxes here, and Ukraine is losing in this way. And I think we will probably lose even more people. That is, don't let's not make this discussion upset us.
Yeah. There's
So
some areas that I leave alone to see. I met Ukrainians in EU. This is Arcadian, and that they moved back to Ukraine because the salaries, especially working remotely with companies from the rest of the world, was more profitable. So I think that that's one of the things I was curious about is that, um, you know, when the cost of living here versus the ability to bring in money from abroad is shown, if you can do IT work, for instance, or certain consultation work, you can do that from Ukraine and bring in money from abroad with your expertise. And I think that we will see Ukrainians who can return to say, I want to invest in my country again. I hope that's my dream.
I hope so, but like I'm a little bit pessimistic in this way.
Sure.
Sure, I have lots of people living abroad, lots of people who managed to got residence permit, and I really even in the United States, but I see that really like you know a guy telling me even I don't hear like these explosions, this like and for people who didn't face this as we face this here, for people who just came to Kiev and see that like some of residential buildings destroyed. I don't say even about Kharkiv, as you found that central Kharkiv was pretty was severe damaged.
Yeah.
And you see like residential buildings fully destroyed, some shopping malls, and Kharkiv has lots of residential neighborhood fully destroyed by Russians. So I don't think that most of these people come back, even despite that they are spending half of the salary for renting an apartment, etc. But I hope like at least 20-25% of our refugees, of our Ukrainians living abroad, at least 20-25%, which is it's still in millions. I remember that we have around 6 million Ukrainians now in total in the European Union. So even if 1 million and 1.5 million Ukrainians come back, return to Ukraine, I think it will be a good deal, a big deal for Ukraine, and we will be at least happy to see them back here.
Right.
So that is why I'm a pretty pessimistic, just because of it's 4 years. That's pretty a lot. Some people meet wives or husbands. Some people, somebody I remember I know somebody burned children outside Ukraine. So and their children probably will be Ukrainians just because their parents are Ukrainians, but probably they will choose passport of the European Union countries. Unfortunately, I don't want to be fully pessimistic, but I try to be realistic. As I remember, my last time abroad. Let me just a couple.
Yeah, of course. So take your time.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
My last time abroad was at the late 2023, so it was more than 2 years ago. Yeah, I've been to Poland. It was during the invasion, so I came to. We've been to the United States, and we also with my colleague. So yeah, my last time of being in Poland even was late 2023. So it was almost 2 years of the invasion, and they say like, oh, it's 2 years, it's pretty a lot. So we are choosing to live like in Wrocław, in Polish city of Wrocław, and Warsaw, in other cities, just because it's not dangerous here. Like we have this trauma. Ukrainians, I think, will for a long time have this trauma that even if we have truce, even if we have, I don't know, if really Ukraine will manage to have like this deal with Russians. I don't know the form of this deal. It doesn't matter now. Even we have, we will forever, for instance, my generation will forever be afraid of randomly Russian attack. So that is also we must to think of.
I can see actually. I can see now. I can see the chat in my thing here. So if you have questions down there, I can finally see you in the chat. I'll tell a funny story, and then I have a question based on this. I intentionally keep I say I live like a monk. It keeps my drama bin very low. It might be a little lonely, but we'll worry about it after the war. And there was one woman I know through a friend that she wanted to go on a date. We had a little afternoon date. And will you wear your kilt? Yeah, of course I'll wear my kilt, no problem. And so we go there, and she's like, "So you take me to America after the war? You don't want to go home? Я в дома." So she had this imagined view of awesome America. And well, why don't you miss it? I go, okay, hold on. And I pulled up my phone and I showed me on doing counterterrorism work and like shootings and stuff, mass shootings in schools and all the shit that happens in America. I said, let me ask you a question. When was the last time a kid walked into like a silpo and just started shooting everybody? No, no, no. I said, your expression tells me the difference. Okay. So we have rockets and we have drones and we have, the fucking Russians, but we know the enemy. In America, you don't know where it's going to come from. You go to a mall, there's a shooting. You go to a church, there's a shooting. You go to school, there's a fucking shooting. And she's just kind of beginning to get why I'm not interested in dealing with America, right? Now, she's very brilliant. I have to give her complete credit. She says, what about Scotland? That was a great answer, actually. It was a really wonderful answer. But I stayed with the same answer, which is, no, I live here and I'm not leaving. So that's a funny story for our friends. And it was one of those things where when I see why people want to live abroad, especially if they think about America, there's this illusion of America that's based in television that if you get there, it's not as easy as you think. In fact, under Donald Trump, it's not so easy at all. But it brings me to a question for you. Are there some areas that you think Ukrainians have had that have been living abroad the last few years during the full-scale invasion have done pretty well? Like I know people who've gone to the UK who've made some good comments about how their lives are and they're loving to learn, or maybe parts of Europe. What do you think? Where are some areas Ukrainians have gone abroad that it's worked out pretty good for them?
I know a couple of Ukrainians who came to the United States and they are okay to even in DC, for instance, which I think DC is pretty expensive to live. So the Ukrainians really, like we are pretty. We are the people that, for instance, Ukrainians are hardworking. So if you are working, if you don't break rules somewhere abroad in the countries, if you are just doing that, you must do pay tax, find working, try to incorporate it in the local society, which is sometimes it's not easy. For instance, it's not easy now in Poland. The situation is super different than it when I was in Poland last time, and it is now. And what I really found, for instance, in Poland, when I told that I'm not refugee, I just came for a couple of days in transition to another country. They're like, okay. So I see that Ukrainians are the best place for Ukrainians. As for me, is home. Ukraine is my home, sure, and I'm here, and I came back from abroad, as you find me here in Kyiv. So I think Ukrainians really, if in most cases, most of people of my age, I'm 29, by the way. People of my age, they are okay to live everywhere. Even they are learning. It's easy. It's still easy for us to learn one more language. It's easy to incorporate in local society, and we are just same people as most of Europeans. I think, yeah, we have sure we have like some local differences, but it's okay for us. So I don't see in this case issues. I'm really what I didn't like, what I didn't enjoy, that Ukrainians who are just like begging. I found this situation in Poland, for instance, where I like, oh my god, they still my compatriots, still Ukrainians, but when I found like they are looking as people with as a homeless as homeless people. So I didn't enjoy this stuff. Like you came to abroad without nothing, and when I found out that they're from Western Ukraine, it was like, so again, you came from Lviv, from etc. to Poland to find shelter. It's still pretty strange for me, I think. So you're using European taxes for living in Poland, running from Lviv or running from Ternopil, which is sometimes it's pretty dangerous also in Lviv. And we remember about casualties in Lviv. Lviv also suffered a couple of attacks, but by the way, I'm super sorry. Maybe I'm traumatized with my Kharkiv experience, or maybe I'm traumatized with my.
Well, I think you bring up a very good point about the difference in the West and East. Like, I would never want any part of the country hit at all, but I know when I look at the data polling about who's willing to sacrifice land versus for peace. Anyway, the further west you get, the more that number changes, and the further you away from the front, it changes. So I think that there's a reality check when those missiles hit further in the west. They're like, okay, so how far are you from it now? But it creates a little bit of tension in that. But honestly, I've been very blessed by one of my early experiences to go to Kharkiv, and it was in Malaya Rohan and Verivka. And there was a lady there. She says, well, they may be in the west and we're in the east, but we are one, we are the same. And I know people, and she had this really wonderful attitude, like, people say we're different, but truly we're all both Ukrainian. And this was very important to hear, knowing that the historical, division of east and west is there. But I think that data number is something to pay attention to, that the further you are towards the west, the more it sounds easy to say, why not let go of this pesky Donbass, if it stops the missiles hitting here. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Like really, we have this, and it's as for me, I don't want to divide between like Western, Southern, Eastern Ukrainians. We still all are Ukrainians, and we will forever be all Ukrainians. For instance, I went to Euromaidan in Kyiv. It was back in 2014. And I also been to Euromaidan in Kharkiv. It was in building of the regional administration, which was Russia destroyed this building.
This is invaluable. Hold on, this is where I take notes. Continue.
I've been to Euromaidan.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been to Euromaidan both in Kharkiv and in Kyiv. It was my first year. I was a first year student, so and I remember we just stayed together with students from Ternopil, Zakarpattia, somewhere else. And what I found out, even my first language was Russian. Yeah, I fully switched to Ukrainian for last 4 years. And it was really, it didn't matter for both of us. It doesn't matter, Ukrainian, Russian. We had same values. And I think it must be on the top of this discussion. So it doesn't matter. So there are lots of guys who died for Ukraine from Lviv region. I want to find analytics related to it was a map of the regions with the most casualties during the invasion. It was military soldiers, personnel who, and like Dnipropetrovsk region, also Kharkiv and Lviv. So in this case, and not only in this case, I don't see the difference. Yeah, we are feeling more in Kharkiv. Also, you're feeling this war. You see this war. You really, and you see the destroyed buildings. You see that air alert almost during the whole day. You cannot feel the same in Lviv. Sure,
Right.
but still, Lviv still is in war, and still lots of people, thousands of people in Lviv, for instance, are involved in this war. Their relatives, so somebody still. So I have lots of friends of mine who in Lviv,
Hmm.
and they still are involved in the collection money, the donation. So I don't, yeah, we have different. I think we have different experience, but it doesn't matter for me. Just because I used to live in Kharkiv, but they were born in Lviv, it
Hmm.
didn't make me or them less Ukrainians, or even so. That is the issue that I hope it won't be when we probably will have elections, and I hope politicians won't use this case or won't use this to divide Ukrainians between like, oh, these Eastern Ukrainians, you suffered hundreds of missiles and thousands of drones attacked by Russians to your
Hmm.
cities, but oh, you're from Lviv, you just had like 10 missiles. We must not to divide like
Right.
this difference. So I think it is the best
Also,
for us
I
not to.
friends, I'm seeing some comments in the space. So, are they the
uh,
discussion area? If you guys have questions, put them down, or we can see them. I think we're kind of addressing the ones I see there. We're around a topic I've been thinking for the last 20 minutes. It was kind of part of my experience in a really important interview I did almost 3 years ago with a man from Savinci named Anatoly Kharhati. He's one of my feature articles that I did that changed my just really дуже багато емоцій. And Anatoly was held in Balaklia for 100 days in captivity and tortured, and he was a 70-year-old, 69 videos from Izum and Balaklia in the 90s where it was all like perfect and sweet and like school openings and business openings. And then he was captured by the Russians and held and tortured. And we went out to do an interview with him. And one of the things we were talking about then was how the young people move away from the cell or the small villages and towns to the major cities. And this is true in a lot of parts of the world. It's not really
Mhm.
uncommon in Ukraine. But let's talk a little bit about how the town, the village is affected by these realities, not just the cities, but at the village level, selo, like how the departure of children and young people to the bigger cities is one phenomenon, but now we've compounded it by the war as well. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. It's just basic for Ukraine. So you told about Kharkiv region. I think most of these people came to Kharkiv just to live to get education in Kharkiv.
Yeah,
So that is the way I moved.
yeah,
At first, my first city, I was born in Dnipro. Then I went to Kharkiv, and now I'm in Kyiv. So from
yeah,
another one, from large to the largest and to the biggest city in Ukraine is Kyiv. So I think it's common everywhere,
yeah,
probably.
yeah.
And
I
I
mean, I
think
think it's
that
true in America. There are places in America that I know if you said, Chris, you want to go live in, and you list some little town, you're like, why? Like my mom went off and moved in the last several years of her life, moved to an area right on the border of Arkansas, away from everything, and that was perfect for her. I would go fucking nuts because I like civilization and culture, and what am I going to get out there? It's like if you like fishing and if you like nature, maybe it's perfect. If you don't like people, maybe it's perfect. But here I think that when I go through the villages, like when I travel, I love to go to a lot of places. And a lot of these places were destroyed, like when we went through those regions in Kharkiv, and my best friend's family are all in Kherson. So I traveled all throughout Kherson Oblast in 2022 and 2023 into 2024. And these villages are just destroyed. They're all rubble, so it's hard to tell where that will go. Again, if anyone has questions down in the commentary, please make sure that you put them down there. We'd be glad to ask them for you. Um, but I think the displacement of the folks there is part of it. Back to the thing where you talk about unified. Um, are there areas of what's happening in the country now that you see? need a lot of work, especially as journalists, where the more we explore how the people are living, we can be helpful. As journalists, besides the obvious big things about electricity, what are the areas as journalists we need to do a better job at to help Ukrainians? Big question. Oh, audio. There we go. I got you.
Oh.
I got you. Step back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's okay. Issue that we must cover now is, I think, European integration. So Ukraine must do a big job to get into the European Union, and I don't think that our parliament is ready enough to do so many, like thousands of to prepare to vote for thousands of laws, and that is a big, really. I hope they can cope with it. So we must to cover this issue. For instance, we must do reform in economy, in agriculture. So I think we must to cover it. That is.
I'm not seeing any coverage about agriculture.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
a good point right there.
Not only agriculture, but also
right
we have
on the list. If anyone doesn't know, we're doing workshop level here as well. This isn't just journalism talk. This is like notes for what we do. So
also we have about customs office. So Ukraine is losing around €1 billion per year, just because of the bribes and the issue with customs office, and it's a must if we would like to join the European Union. So really,
does this mean I have to stop arguing with Bogdan about the customs fees of the things I'm having shipped from America to me, because we have a little bit of a problem? I'm having a little bit of joy, but when I mail stuff in through Nova Postia, I get stuff, and some of it's I already own it, but it's like, it's gonna be this much on customs. I already own the fucking thing. Like, Bogdan, man, fucking read the paperwork. We go at this for days and days. Just send it. How much? Okay, that's not bad. That's not that bad at all. Hold on, I'll just pay the fucking thing. Hurry up. But you're talking about the loss. Very important. What is it meaning at the economic level?
Economic level?
Yeah.
As you know, that National Bank of Ukraine is fully controlled. It's okay. It's fully controlled by the government, but now thanks to the European Union package of the last package that they provided us, 90 billion euros for 2 years. So we will take still our economy stable, but now we must for instance, we must cope with taxation. So that is also, I think, one of the measures is that European Union asks us that that our taxation, for instance, for the individual enterprises, we must to hire it. We have now around 6%, but I think it must be more. I told about individual enterprises, but in comparing the companies, we have so.
Audio. There we
go.
Gotcha. Yeah. I got it now. Oh, it stopped again. One more time. Let's see. Just so we don't miss your words. Let's see here. Let's show you. Battery? Let's see here. I can't hear him. Let's see. We'll wait. Okay. Чекаємо. Yeah, все добре. Не. Let's see here. We'll find another method. Everyone hang tight. We will wait until we hear. As soon as we hear you, I'll give you a thumbs up. And to those who are joining us, thank you so much. We'll get this part figured out. Let's see here. Ne. Let's see. If we have to restart, I can wait. If you want to log back in, if you want to just double check, we can make it work. No problem. We have patience. But no audio at the moment. And I appreciate you. This is a great discussion. I'm learning a lot. Thank you. That's what this is all about. We want to make sure that we can. That's also, I see one of the questions up at the top we will solve. Still can't hear you, but let's just see if we can get. So do you want to recycle the app? Oh, almost. Let's see.
I know. I know what's going on.
Gosh, hold on. Try again.
Could you hear me now or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Better.
Oh, I try to do my best.
Добре.
So yeah, we have lots of things to do before our European integration. There is issues that we must cover, and I want to finish. Also, reconstruction. I think we will probably have lots of cases, unfortunately, corruption cases related to the reconstruction. We had it during the past 3 years, because we started reconstruction at the end of the 2022 and also at the beginning of 2023 year. So really, we must cover reconstruction also in Ukraine, because billions will go to the reconstruction, and really it's an issue.
Yeah.
And what I really hope that if we had issues with corruption issues, really these people must face imprisonment. That is the only way for Ukraine
Yeah, I think you said
to
this perfect
survive, I
earlier,
think.
not having investigations only in court hearings, but actually results and punishment that it's fit to that will be important.
Yeah, so that's it.
One of the cool comments earlier, and I want to just make sure that Do Always Vote Blue is heard. It said, do you think the children who have been kidnapped by Russia will be returned? I'm furious that this has happened in your country, and now Trump and his DHS ICE is doing the same with immigrants being disappeared. Now, there was an announcement today by Zelensky that more children had been returned. And I also
2,000 children.
well, it's amazing actually, because as you know, we just get these like a little bit by little bit, you know. But do you have any comments on that, since we have one of the viewers brought that question up?
Sure, I have a comment on it.
Of course.
First of all, I don't think that it is just same as I see doing in the United States. Do you know that some of the children kidnapped by Russia stayed just at the occupied territories, as they didn't have enough time to leave this territory? So they just like being hostages at the occupied territory, children with their parents. So that is pretty different. But then that is the same. Then Russians took these children from the occupied territories and then spreading these children even without parents. You know, many parents, for instance, in Mariupol, were killed by Russians in their own buildings. So the issue here, I don't believe that all the children kidnapped by Russia will be returned to Ukraine. As I remember, according to the Ukraine human rights officer Dmytro Lubinets, he told that around 20,000 of children on the occupied territories of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions stayed. So we managed to take back around 10% of these children. So I do not believe, just because the policies that Russia is doing, Russia changing their names, changing their surnames, and also changing even. It was pretty, as for me, I don't know what was the message of the Russian, but they are even changing their date of birth in order not to find.
Right.
You know, we have all this. Ukraine
to confuse the data, essentially.
Yep. To confuse. So even Ukraine has this data. So just because we have registers of all children born in Ukraine, so I don't think that all. And they took like 2 or 3 months, and then they are adopting Ukrainian children in the Russian family somewhere far away in the eastern part of Russia, which is thousands of kilometers from Ukraine. So I don't think so, but I hope that we can take back as much as we can. I think at least half of this, at least 10,000 of children, will be a good result for Ukraine, and I hope so. But
well, let me let the listeners know and the viewers know this. One of the reasons why I wanted to move to this platform more aggressively is so that you could have Dennis on here and you have my experience on here, because I often go to Media Center Ukraine and talk directly with different NGOs and officials who are doing this work, like you mentioned, our ombudsman, Lubinets. But my friend Katerina Rashevska and 5am Coalition and other groups have really focused exclusively on this in a way that, for the viewers, let me break it down. There's sort of 3 categories that I focus on, which is the captured defenders, the captured civilians, and the captured children. And I will divide the captured civilians also into some leadership, like some of the captured mayors and stuff. But with the captured children, there are additionally three layers. There are children who, like you mentioned, whose parents were killed, or at least they're disconnected from that. So there's very little record, and they're sort of just missing into the system. Then there were children who were wards of the state under Ukrainians, so there's records of them and in the system because they were basically the Ukrainian government was the Ukrainian government was responsible, and there's a registry. And then there's the ones where they're separated from living family, and that living family says, "We want our nephew back, my son back, whoever it is." And Russians have been very quick to want to get rid of any children back, sending them back if there's someone looking for them. So the more there's a name and attachment to looking for that child, the less complications for Russia to play the erasure game. But it's those other children, the ones who had very little record of the parents were either killed or are currently in occupation, that are the most vulnerable, where you can see them erasing them into the Russian system. So if that it helps our viewers understand some of what we've learned. And part of what I'm saying is that journalists here, we're your resource to that knowledge, just so you know. So don't forget to follow Dennis. And by the way, subscribe to his account. And if you've got money in your pocket, put money on that account for that subscription, so that there's a chance for him to focus entirely on the work and not on the money.
Please donate to Chris. Really, he's doing a great job, and he deserves it. Really,
appreciate you, my bro. One more thing about the indoctrination, because of the videos we see out of Skadovsk and other areas where the children are being brainwashed, into singing Russian songs and threatened even. Did you see that video that just came out a few days ago? They were threatening, if you give away positions, there'll be consequences. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I want to say about that Russia are brainwashing Ukrainian children since back 2014. So really they had a special policy on Ukrainians, on Ukrainian children, how to cope with them. And I remember we did investigation together with Radio Free Liberty a year and a half ago, related to the Russian movements. They have Движение Первых, movement of the first, in translation. They have also US Army, Yun Armia, and they are also some part of locals organization, which mostly are operated by the funds of the occupation authorities. So they have these movements in the Kherson region, in the Zaporizhia region, and also in Donetsk region, the occupied part, and also in Lugansk. So they did it. It was one of the first things that they're doing in the occupied area. So they are just militarizing, not only just brainwashing, as you mentioned before. They are just they are only militarizing children. You remember, like with guns in charge, what they are doing. So and the issue is that they are moving it. They're switching these children, for instance, from Zaporizhia region, occupied Zaporizhia region, to another city, for instance, to Crimea.
Right.
From Crimea, for instance, to Sochi, or to another city, South Caucasian cities of Russia. So, and they're just switching them. Why? By the way, they're doing it firstly for brainwashing, for militarizing, and also they to have communication not with Ukrainian children as they are, but also with Russians. And that is like a way how they are trying to indoctrinate Ukrainian children in the Russian educational system. I don't know how to cope with it. We have a couple of calls, and we called to the guy who was involved in the Yun Army, US Army, Yun Armia, in Donetsk region. He was Russian veteran. He had Ukrainian passport. This guy was Ukrainian. He told I really like it just because we are Russians, like this stuff. So they are just really, they know what they are doing. They know what these people know. Mostly they are locals. Local teachers are also involving who decided to live in Russia under Russian authorities, Russian occupation authorities. They're doing this stuff, and I don't know really how to cope with it, because they know that it's war crime, but they really they just don't care. even indoctrinated thousands of Ukrainian children. So, but I don't know really how to cope with it. Do you have any ideas? How can we, not only just in discussion, not only just even Ukrainian human rights officer or etc., even during the United Nations, which I think
I mean,
is
I
useless.
personally think,
Yeah.
personally, the more we educate our viewers to what really happens here, the more we do for Ukraine by this. Because I come from Texas, where we don't see any of this material, even before the full scale invasion. We don't see much about what happens with Ukraine and Russians. And my kung fu shifu asked me the other day. He says, "Can you? I know there's a difference, but I don't know what it is, and I know you're the guy who knows. What's really different between Ukrainians and Russians?" I'm like, "How how long do you have? Because this could go for a while." Okay, well, give me the short version. Okay, well, you study languages, yeah? He goes, okay, what's the difference? And I said, what's the difference between like Fujian, and I started using Chinese languages because I knew he'd relate to that. He goes, yeah, okay, they're pretty different. I said, and what's the difference between, say, Portuguese and Romanian? They're both Romance languages, right? Yeah, they're both common rooted in Latin. Yeah. Well, Ukrainian is more related to Polish, and there are whole areas of words where I can relate to some Russian stuff now, but not as well as I definitely with Ukrainian. He goes, okay. So, but now, and I went layers and layers deep, and this took an hour. Like an hour later, I'm still going, okay. Then there's instruments. Okay. So there's the balalaika, 3 strings, and then there's the bandura, which is like a physics degree, and he goes, okay. So this goes on and on. But I was telling him like radically different roots, and the more our friends abroad understand this, that what I have honestly really enjoyed learning here for 4 years. I've been here, for those who don't know this tonight, listening for the first time. I've been here since January 2022, and I didn't expect to be staying, but I did. And I learned from the beginning all sorts of things from the ground up. And I want to go back to one of them that's a question for you. I'm heavily involved in breaking apart the Surkov leaks from our awesome, awesome, super awesome, awesome group, Inform Napalm, and our Ukrainian Cyber Alliance teams. And I was already familiar with them from a distance, so I'm not from the ground up. But what I lack sometimes is the ability to talk to guys like you, say, okay, look, in my research, I understood in Kharkiv there were football clubs, in Odessa there were football clubs, and in Kyiv there were football clubs. And wait, there was a truce? Should say a truce. There's never a truce in football clubs. There's like everyone's got there's a rivalry, right? But you bring me back to why it failed in Kharkiv. Why did it fail in Odessa when it succeeded in Donetsk and Luhansk, the hybrid warfare? So since you're from Kharkiv, if you wouldn't mind, give me a little perspective of that Euromaidan in Kharkiv and what happened, because I think that this is a lesson that people abroad need to really get down. And we'll do this a whole nother show about this, because this is a big topic, actually, bigger than you might realize. Well, let's talk a little bit about Euromaidan Kharkiv instead of Euromaidan Kyiv.
Mm,
How, how yeah.
yeah. I want to say about Euromaidan and Kharkiv, it was pretty different from Donetsk. As I told many times, that Kharkiv was students' capital of Ukraine, and there were really thousands, hundreds of thousands people from the whole country, including me.
Yeah.
I was not born in Kharkiv. I was born in Dnipro. So, really, it's pretty similar from Luhansk or Donetsk. Then these people, for instance, from Kirovograd region, central Ukraine, Cherkasy region, also central Ukraine, people from the western part of Ukraine, and all of these people came to the. First, it was near the monument of Taras Shevchenko, and then we moved to the regional administration building, regional council. So really, most of these people who were involved in Euromaidan and Kharkiv were not Kharkivans, were not locals.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is one of the secret. And also there were people also motivated and patriotic from Kharkiv.
Mm-hmm.
But they were not majority. Majority was people from outside. As
Mm-hmm.
Donetsk and Luhansk, both cities, they are mostly industrial. Kharkiv also industrial for sure.
Sure.
but these cities does not have so many students. I think it helped Kharkiv. On the other side, also, I think local businesses were, as you remember, Donetsk with Renat Akhmetov, who firstly, uh, by the way, he owns of the tech.
Right.
He's an owner of the tech. But by the way, Renat Akhmetov, who was like he tried to trade, with separatists in Donetsk. He tried like to be like in between Ukrainian Kyiv authorities and also between local separatists. And
Yeah.
he also tried to find help, aid from the Russian side, not only from these separatists. Separatists was just bettered by Russia,
Right.
That is pretty different. So firstly, people who came to Euromaidan were totally different in Donetsk. By the way, thousands of people in Donetsk also came outside, pro-Ukrainian people, and you can find here that around 20,000 of locals in Donetsk came to the main square, but
Right.
even people in Kharkiv were more. And really, businesses supported pro-Ukrainian part in Kharkiv more than in Donetsk. I think it also helped Kharkiv to survive and help Kharkiv to still not be occupied and still be Ukrainian proud. Now, Kharkivans, I think, would say that we are proud Ukrainians. So, and also, you remember, probably, our former interior minister, Sanovakov, also from Kharkiv. And as I remember, he asked some National Guard guys to came to Kharkiv, and it also helped to some of the Russians took imprisonment. As I remember, it was back in 2014. So all of these parts helped Kharkiv to survive. The first Russian aggression, the first Russian hybrid war, as you told
And
me.
we're at 12
That
years.
is
I mean, it's amazing when you look at the calendar where it's 12 years now at this juncture for our listeners and viewers. And I'm breaking apart both the actions in Kharkiv, and then let me say I have to thank all of the shitbag trolls because you give me homework. Like, what was the lie today? Hold on, Miss Sucha. The Odesa Trade House fire and the trade house. Okay, May 2nd, 2014. Okay, and then it becomes a thing to really learn, like perfectly learn, and I have the skill set to do so. So in doing so, that's where the research became more fascinating for me because one, I live here, so I can ask people who were part of this, and even more so is when they say, "Hey, just ask this person because they're very connected and they knew all those people." Um, if not for basically the ultras in certain clubs, football clubs,
we forgot about
really,
ultras, really.
yeah. So exactly, if not for some of that energy, who knows what would happen? But yeah, take the ball.
And also, really, I forgot, really, ultras were also important. They were among us, between us. Also, some guys, like dozens of guys, also joined the Euromaidan. And they did a great job. And I remember I've seen in person, I think you probably know this guy, Andrei Beletsky,
Yeah.
who is now head of the corps of Third Assault Brigade. Formerly it was Third Assault Brigade. Now it's
Right.
he is a head of corps. So, and I remember him. I've seen him a couple of times during the Euromaidan. He was just a young guy, and he also mostly from the ultras from this area, from Metalist Football Club.
Right.
And he also organized these people who really tried to find Russians. And I remember that there were really lots of Russians from Belgorod. How was it? It was Russia took a couple of buses from the Belgorod. Belgorod is, I'm just explaining, it's just next regional center next to Kharkiv, around like 60 probably kilometers, 50, 60 kilometers from Kharkiv. So they took these buses, they placed it not so far from the central square of Kharkiv, so Border Square. And it was really like a couple of buses, and these guys came and really what also helped that when you discussing with these guys, they just like they have like strong Russian accent, so it's super similar. It's similar between us, between Kharkiv or Dnipro, yeah, but it's different when you are from abroad. So it also helps to find who is other people who were Ukrainians or who were just Russians who came just to earn money to Kharkiv. With they took their flags, their Russian flag, this stuff. So I think really ultras help. So it was like a match of these parts. People pro-Ukrainian, mostly not from Kharkiv, also ultras from Kharkiv, locals, and also National Guard forces who also helped. And really, I think that Ukraine didn't manage to do the same in Donetsk and Luhansk. And really, I think if we even tried to do it, at least some forces to go inside Donetsk, I think but I'm not an expert here, so I cannot say.
Well,
I can
what
say
I
in this
found
way.
what I found in the research of doing it, and I've been very blessed to be able to talk to a range of people, meaning that politically they're not the same at all. They have different, like I come from more of what would be thought of as the progressive side of things. I don't really like left and right for my compass, but I understand it. And like some people said the documentary Winter on Fire was too far like the left, and it omits all of this other stuff. And then there's other sides that say, well, with all these extreme right wing guys, private sector, etc., and Swoboda Party. And I think that kind of misses a bigger thing that America needs to listen to, especially for all of our American listeners, is if Russia and China invaded tomorrow, are you stopping to check whether or not Enrique Tarrio and you still have a problem? Or are you going, hey, look, we hit each other yesterday, but that's the fucking enemy, right? Yeah, okay. And I think that that's what I saw, was that people had to put a bigger objective on the table. And then all of a sudden I read there was a truce, that football clubs had a truce. What? Like, and if people don't understand how that does not happen, these are like in the bones. Like, I'm from Houston. Fuck Dallas. What do I need Dallas for? So we can really relate to this. Like, you're gonna be friends with people from Dallas. Cool. Morgan Fairchild, she's cool, but no, I mean, we can relate to these things. We pick on some other city as a deeply invested thing, right? Fuck the Pittsburgh Steelers or whoever it is, right? And so that's very true here. And all of a sudden there was a truce for a bigger picture of things.
Yeah, but United States, I think, have never faced the same situation as we had in Ukraine. The only option was to unify all these fan groups of Dynamo Kyiv, Shakhtar Donetsk, Metalist Kharkiv, Dnipro, for instance, Karpatel, if it doesn't matter, really.
Yeah.
And we're still unified, still Ukrainian ultras groups. So many people, unfortunately, have fallen on the battlefield when the first invasion, the first Russian invasion. But really, I think I don't see any other way now. So it was it was pretty cool decision from these guys. I remember just a joke. My first travel from is like we had so hard matches between Dnipro and Kharkiv just because neighboring cities, also both large cities, but we hate Kharkivans hate us. I was not super fan of, but I used to travel for my team Dnipro. And it was maybe I was a 10 year at school. It was like around 15, 16 years. But by the way, it was my first trip to Kharkiv. And I took my T-shirt Dnipro. And I also took my Rosa with Dnipro. And the first option when I went out of the railway station together with my friend, some local fans of Kharkiv, we were super young, The first my vision of Kharkiv was they just beat us and took away my T-shirt and took away my stuff.
Wow. And all the people in England who know how football clubs are, the hooligans, and like how they go into Europe and all that, it's not really all that hard to explain to people who've been in that.
Yeah.
And my bloodline goes both English and Scottish. And I used to always laugh that the English hoodlums know not to go to Glasgow. don't go to
Mhm.
Glasgow with your shit because you're going to get your ass handed to you. They are they are going to kick your ass if you just try. So I think that that's important because and my focus at the time was on Odessa because of the trade house fire and the misinformation and disinformation circled around it. That when I got down into the gears of what happened, I went, so this group and this group, and this is what I do really well. And I put it together and I saw that truce and I went, that's what people abroad don't understand is how during existential threat, all that stuff drifts away.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore, from
Yeah.
what city or what club you represent now.
Right.
And unfortunately,
Well,
Ukrainian football has changed much, and it's
yeah. I
unfortunately.
have not been able to see one match here. I see some practicing goes on, but because of security reasons, they exist, but I don't get to really see them or I see them abroad and they make a big deal. But I'll say there's to all of our viewers, you have to know a phrase. Everyone, it's the first phrase I learned that was most important. And it wasn't, Yahochukama. You don't say Yahochukama, say Daito Budaska. This is not rude, man. Don't say Yahochu. Just do that. But no, it was at dinner with my best friend who's a language master. He goes, I have to teach you a very important song. Here, first Korivka. Okay. It's Putin Huilo. La 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 la. And
And
that was
this phrase became
yeah,
from Kharkiv. It was founded
exactly.
in Kharkiv. Yeah,
So it was a soccer. What was the coach's name that it was aimed at for years before? It started with an S. Do you know who I'm
Coach
talking about? There was
S
or
from
not a coach,
Kharkiv.
but no, it was a football club
Coach.
owner. There was the origin of the actual chant was aimed at someone else first before 2014, and it was rebranded to Putin. Do you know?
I know rebranded to
Yeah, there was
Putin.
so before Putin Huilo, there was another soccer club owner, a football club owner whose his name was who it was chanted at between clubs, and then it changed to Putin Huilo in 2014. So I'll dig that up for our next show. But in fact, we should do one because we're on the anniversary of both the changes 12 years ago and of course the full scale invasion next week. But yeah, originally the chant was actually aimed at another soccer club owner, football club owner, and then about 12 years ago, one of the most famous phrases that lives here in this country that I get to use all the time was invented in Kharkiv, of all places. Of course, Звичайно, bro.
I wanna say thank you to Lisa, and I
Yes.
see I see that she thanked us for and thanked me for sharing Ukraine experience. I'm happy. Really, it is pretty good discussion. We covered so many topics,
Yes.
from the bringing kids back to the Ukrainian football. So I'm really happy for Lisa that she doesn't have broken bones. By the way,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
and
Lisa, thank you, and I
how
do hope
yeah,
you get
yeah,
better.
yeah.
Plus,
Take care, please.
we're sliding around the ice. I can totally relate. I want to stay to the comment, the last one that just came in. It may be true that the Proud Boy and those did try to overthrow the democracy. So yeah, they may be on our side, but I wouldn't let my guard down for a second. I think that's a very important point. Is that I'm ideologically not only opposed, but I'm actually hostile to certain elements of American society that have really done damage to people in my country. And I've never been on the same ideological side as them. I have no turnaround story, as some people call it, where I was going this way and then some other thing went. I don't really have that. But there are times where an existential threat changes everything, and we live that here in Ukraine, where people who may have had a difference before 4 years ago now fight alongside each other at the front, at the back line as researchers, and that is so important to understand. And I think that's one of the things I like to convey to people in America is that what I've seen here is that we don't have the luxury of those problems. There are times I had to let a conflict go with someone just for the bigger picture, and that's a lesson to be learned here.
May I ask you, like, as
Of course.
we as we
Of
took
course.
as we started to talk about the United States, all of us know about the upcoming congressional elections. So
Yeah.
curious about your prediction. How do you think will it really change the United States? Will the result of this election?
So I'll use Moya Mama as the best example. My real family is all gone for years, in fact. But I have a Ukrainian family, and Mama came out of occupation out of Kherson after November 2022, and she's the most precious person. Her birthday is February 24th. So it's a very, very difficult day, but not in my house. In other words, when I go over there next week, nas domu mama ponoduse, Oh, so she knows I reclaimed the day for mama. But the midterms mattered in 2022. Russia really, really was pouring on as much power as they had, and it was limited. And then when the midterms did not go their way, they withdrew because they knew they had to come up with another way to fight the fight. And there's actually substantive reasons to believe that the Russians were watching the midterms of 2022 in America. Now, to the midterms in America now, there are people who are concerned that they're going to be interrupted or he's going to stop them. And I remind people that we do not have centralized national elections. We have state republic level elections. And that means that every state, like California, that's run by basically the blue party, they will have elections. Will there be problems? Probably, but not at the system level because they're handled by the Democratic Party, or at least those states are sound. California is a great example. But in red states that have already shown fealty to Donald Trump, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I know the elections will happen, but I don't know what the results will be. So what do I see will happen? I think that if Trump tries to interfere at a more substantive level than running at the mouth, which is very Donald Trump, then I think that conservatives need to be aware that it's their voice that's being stifled. Democrats already know it's a warning. And I think that between now and then, my bigger concern is the amount of violence that happens, much like I was on the record in September 2020 before the insurrection. I was on MSNBC basically being one of the people predicting it. I just didn't know where. I didn't know Jan 6 yet because that wasn't announced yet. But I knew the groups that were coming and showing up that eventually hit the Capitol. Now, the midterms are clearly showing that Donald Trump is in big trouble, and the people around him are in big trouble, and people in the Republican Party are saying, "Hey, look, man, like we're going to lose because of this." So the fact they're doing what I call negotiating with reality is a good thing. I am actually going to have over the next few weeks, I have some friends like Rick Wilson and Fred Wellman coming on. And actually on Thursday, I'm going to have Colonel Morris Davis, who's running for office as a Democrat in North Carolina. Now, I met him when he was a Republican and he was the head justice for Guantanamo Bay and a military guy, right? And now he's a Democrat and he's still a military guy with all.
Oh. Unfortunately, I cannot hear you. Do just I have interruptions? Could please somebody write in the live chat? Chris, are you here? Oh, or it's on my way, on my side. Chris. So by the way, could you please write in the live chat? Can you hear me? Can you hear Chris? Because I cannot. Is anybody here, by the way? Chris.
Doing? I'm going to change Wi-Fi. Double check.
Oh, welcome back.
I'm changing Wi-Fi. Same Wi-Fi, but better. We good?
Welcome back. So,
Awesome.
by the way,
okay, so sorry if everyone. I could see you, by the way, during all of that, and I could see the text. But anyway, I just changed my Wi-Fi signal so the 5G. Let me go. I don't know what the last item you heard, but about the midterms. I think the main thing is watching that that there are people who are Republicans who are afraid for their seat because of Donald Trump taking it too far, and that there are town halls showing up and saying, "Hey, yeah, this is not what we're looking for. We want you to take care of our priorities as you stated." And watching the course corrections over the next few months, I think, will be very important. And just for our viewers, we're going there. On Thursday, we will have Colonel Morris Davis as one of our guests, and we're going to be bringing on like Rick Wilson and the guys from Lincoln Project, Fred Wellman, different people who are running for office. Especially, I'm going to talk to guys who are military. I'd love to have some of the top candidates. They're hard to get on Substack, but we'll see. And we're definitely going to be covering it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it affects the current negotiations that we see in Geneva, where Trump wants his prize and he wants it by May. I'm sorry, bro. I don't know what to tell you about that piece of garbage. Mama got used to me being angry at 2:00 in the morning. What were you talking about? Mama only speaks in Ukrainian to me. What were you talking about at 2:00 in the morning? You talking too loud. What were you talking about? Я сказал про допомогу. Я дуже злий через американців, так? Я і допомогу. Oh, okay. And she goes back to her room. So for all of you who don't understand Ukrainian, that's me saying I'm talking about two Americans. I'm upset about the Americans because of the age. She goes, oh, okay. And she goes back to her room because she gets it. She totally gets it. Zrozumilo. I get it. That's your Ukrainian lessons for everyone today. You have to know that phrase. My master language teacher will share with you. Zrozumilo. So I get it.
By the way, I'm so thankful to the Americans. Really, America helped a lot at the beginning of the invasion. By the way, and also still so many private donations we have in Ukraine. So
right,
private initiative. So I think that, and I'm so thankful Americans in total.
Yeah.
Even now, America doesn't help that much. They did America as a state. I don't say about the citizens and about personal donation. So
yeah.
So and I'm so thankful for the people. Really, when I've been to the United States, I've been to New York and Washington. I had lots of meetings there. Really, and I really. I was surprised the way how the United States helped us and the way how the people from the U.S. Supported Ukraine.
Right.
By the way, look, I have this stuff.
I have some patches coming from America. I have some friends gathering some patch equipment for my one of my neighbors. He goes, "Hey, a very important question. Yeah, you give me some American patches." Yeah. What you looking for? Just American flags. So I have him something more interesting than just American flags. Some authentic military buddies that are gathering some good stuff that will come over here. But I want to say this, man. I am very glad you came and joined us, and you're going to come back because to our viewers, we're building an organic network of authentic Ukrainian voices, authentic Ukrainian journalist experiences here. And Dennis, bro, you've been one of my favorite people the entire time. We got to bring this together in front of all of our friends.
Thank you, really. Thank you for inviting. And I hope I will join again discussion. And I more than I hope to meet you in person here in Kyiv.
Skoro, завтра, каву. But yeah, let's see what the schedule looks like, and absolutely, and if you wouldn't mind, like next week, what I'd like to do is we'll talk a little bit about the full scale anniversary, and what does that mean? I don't know if that's not really the term I like, but basically, the mile marker of 4 years, and talk a little bit about that, plus the fact that we're at 12 years this week since Yanukovych got on a plane and got the fuck out. And there's just a lot of things that have transpired in that, and I'm very thankful for you. And again, to our viewers, please make sure you're subscribed to Dennis's Substack right now. If you can afford the paid subscription, that's even better. And then, of course, don't forget to see him over there on X, and we'll have you back, man. Plenty. This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, thank you.
Razum, Doc.
Thank you for your time.
Let me say this:
So,
Ukraine is Nakrasche Ukraina. It's a beautiful country. I have been blessed to live here the entire time of 4 years. I don't take vacations, and the energy I get. People say, "How do you do it?" Like, all I have to do is go be around Ukrainians. If you want to see me stressed, it's because I'm dealing with someone who's not Ukrainian. Every time, it's always like, "Where's the stress come?"
Chris, you're brilliant. You're really brilliant.
There's really beautiful people here that even the complicated. I have a chapter about people here. I have a lot of chapters about people, but there's a joke I used to run with, and it's I learned this from Tibetans. Actually, this is where the joke originally is a Tibetan story. I said, "Man, people are great here." Well, I mean, Bogdan's a bit of an asshole, but everyone else is good. And someone thought that was the funniest shit, and I had too many friends named Bogdan, so I had to change the story. And the last one I told this to was a guy who's a friend of mine in Lviv named Bogdan, and I said, "I gotta tell you this because you're gonna like this story." I told him. He just started laughing really hard. I said, "But here's why it came from. Back a long time ago, um, an Indian Buddhist teacher went to Tibet, and he goes up there, and he just believed that Tibetans were like they wouldn't understand Buddhism because they're already really nice. And you need someone for Buddhism, you need someone difficult to kind of work out the patience part of it. And if everyone gets along, it'll be difficult. So he brought his Bengali tea boy with him because he was unrefined and difficult. And he gets up there, he goes, no, no, man. Once he got there, he goes, it was very complicated. And there was plenty of Bengali tea boy types up there that difficult, hard to deal with. And it was a lesson in what I think of as idealism. Like when you've seen Americans who come here and they're like, oh my God, Ukraine is so perfect. And then they get a little bit of a reality check that it's complicated, that there's some difficulties and there's even collaborators and saboteurs. And, it's not worth like sacrificing the people, but it's a real culture with real people who have, you know, the guy who's an asshole on the street for a moment, or he's not patient, or someone who's too superficial and too into their material life. And I love this about Ukraine. You're a real community of all sorts of people. And Bogdan is actually a great guy, so I can't use that joke anymore. But it was designed to show that, yes, for all the perfect side of it that I idealized, that I also accept the difficulties of what comes here, and that I am now incorporated enough that when there's a story of someone all the way up to Yermak or and someone in that position, that they have a national public spectacle happen, that I don't have political heroes at the top. All of my political heroes are at the ground level, as real people, and that was the lesson all along, was to meet people exactly as they are with no pretense. And I can say it's been 4 years of the most amazing experience, and this is just one more example of why, because you're a great brother. So again, everyone, thank you to our wonderful brother Dennis, and all this will be stored on this like beautiful account for us to watch. and you'll be able to actually post the same interview directly to your timeline, because one thing Substack does, which I really, really like, is both of us get this in the end. It's not just on my account and you get to share it. It's on your account with all the little clips and everything. And this team is here to boost you. So to everyone, give a round of applause to our wonderful brother. Molodets, and thank you for your wonderful experience. And we're not done yet.
So thank you for your time. Have a nice evening.
You
Hope
too.
it will be calm.
Бажаю тихо ноби.
Тихої ночі. Тихої ночі.
Yes, we have much to be grateful for. See you soon. До зустрічі.
See you soon. Bye, Chris.
Double punch. And so to our friends, we will say, Slava Ukraini, Heroям Slava і пиздець Російській Федерації.